a private, not-for-profit organization. As always, please feel free to contact us with your comments, suggestions, or questions, and stay with us. Reading the Buffalo News is coming up next.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, July 30th. Your readers today are
Pat Lamont
and Ruth Nowotniak, and we'll start with our weather forecast. Mostly sunny today with a shower in spots, high of 81. Mainly clear tonight, low 62. Clouds breaking at times for some sunshine tomorrow, high of 81. Saturday, intervals of clouds and sun with a thunderstorm on the prowl in the afternoon, high of 84. And Sunday looks like humid with a thunderstorm, high of 77. Nationally, the high was at Needles, California at 106, and the low was at Truckee, California at 36. Our sunrise was at 6:05 this morning, and it will set tonight at 8:39. And our weather trivia question, what is the driest major city in the world? And the answer is Cairo, Egypt. They average only 1 inch of rain each year. That's pretty dry. And now to our front page articles. State Education Chief says Buffalo needs oversight. This is written by Ben Tujimoto, who's a news staff reporter. State Education Commissioner Betty A. Rosa came to Buffalo on Wednesday to take stock of the recent turmoil in the leadership of the Buffalo Public Schools. Before she departed, she announced one official step and left open the possibility of further state intervention. Rosa said an advisor from the State Education Department would be assigned to Buffalo schools to aid Interim Superintendent Ebony Prophet Bullock in the transition period following the sudden departure of former Superintendent Pascal Umbega, who resigned July 13th and is accused in a legal filing of sexual harassment and abuse of authority. I'm going to assign a superintendent to work with the interim superintendent from my staff, Rosa said, and assigning teams that are going to both be present here as well as available for really making sure that all the issues tied into opening school are in place. Rosa met with the media for about 25 minutes, flanked by Assembly members John Rivera and Pat Burke, New York State Regent Kelly B. Wiley, and Bullock. No members of the Buffalo School Board initially faced the cameras, although Rosa confirmed she met earlier Wednesday with Board President Kathy Evans Brown. Vice President Adriana Zulik was in the audience and answered questions as an individual board member after the news conference. Rosa said she visited Buffalo at the urging of elected leaders, including Mayor Sean Ryan, who contacted Rosa on July 19 to express concerns about the school board and district taking action while current and former district leaders faced significant accusations. She said state leaders requested she really step up and please make your way to Buffalo as quickly as possible. The focus of Rosa's visit here was to help the district of about 29,000 students prepare to begin a new school year in just over a month. She refrained from direct answers to questions involving harassment accusations against active board member Louis nicknamed Mookie Hawkins, citing investigations into his conduct. She met not only with Bullock, who was voted as the interim the day of Mumbenga's resignation, but also several members of the district's cabinet, including representatives from finance, instruction, and health and wellness, Rosa said. The advisor would work with the interim superintendent and her district leadership team only, Rosa said, and would not oversee the school board. The commissioner said she was leaning toward appointing an independent monitor to oversee the district and school board, but stopped shy of taking the official step. I do believe that they need a monitor, she said. Rosa offered clarity over whether she now supports the board's decision to fill its empty North District seat July 20th. On the day the board interviewed candidates, she had sent a memo to Evans Brown advising against filling the seat. Evans Brown and Rosa spoke on the phone that day, according to a statement by the board president, and their conversation indicated to Evans Brown that she could proceed with its established process. The board appointed Roscoe Henderson III as its new board member the same day. At no time did the board act with the intent to disregard or defy the Commissioner of Education, Evans Brown wrote July 21, emphasizing it was the board's responsibility to fill the seat within 30 days. On Wednesday, Rosa said she is disappointed the school board did not abide by her memo. She reinforced why she sent her message. I felt that given the nature of what is going on, the complexity of all the issues, usually in times like that, you really take your time in making those kinds of decisions. Evans Brown declined to comment Wednesday in response to Rosa's disappointment, but she did offer a statement about their very productive meeting. We will be able to stabilize our district and provide a level of comfort for our students, families, and staff as we prepare for the start of the new school year, Evans Brown said. By working together, we will be able to move our district forward and improve student outcomes. Rosa hoped their meeting sent a clear message that I am serious, right about the fact that things have to change. Rosa said she advised Evans Brown to work with state politicians toward implementing an independent monitor. The state commissioner focused on the nature of the legal process in answering questions about Hawkins, the board member facing harassment accusations on multiple fronts. He has every right in this kind of a situation to have his legal person obviously represent him, just like anyone else, Rosa said. You know, democracy is messy. An independent monitor would be a higher level of state oversight of district and board operations than the advisor, Rosa announced Wednesday. I just had a monitor with veto power in East Ramapo, Rosa said, referring to a school district on the New York-New Jersey border. The board selected a superintendent. I did not agree. I went into court. We challenged it, and the board had to, in fact, go back. And they did, finally, as of 2 weeks ago, selected a superintendent that we all agreed to. Rivera and Burke said they were pleased with the commissioner's decision Wednesday and alluded to possible state action when the legislative session begins in January. Neither Rosa, Burke, nor Rivera described the process by which a monitor would be implemented. Commissioner Rosa and I also agreed that Buffalo ultimately needs a state monitor with the authority to implement the managerial, fiscal, governance, and educational reforms necessary to restore stability and rebuild public confidence.
Fauci invokes the fifth, but he may not be safe because of it. By now in American politics, we've become accustomed to high-profile figures taking the fifth to avoid answering questions they believe could be used to incriminate them. That includes President Trump doing it more than 400 times in a civil case in 2022. But when it comes to Dr. Anthony Fauci invoking the fifth, as he did repeatedly in Senate testimony Wednesday, it's more complicated. That's because Fauci was pardoned last year by then-President Joe Biden. Indeed, Wednesday's hearing is very unlikely to be the end of the story, and it could grease the skids for Republicans and the Trump administration to do something many of them have floated, trying to imprison Fauci. They ostensibly not trying to prosecute Fauci for what he did during the COVID pandemic, but have talked about holding him in contempt of Congress, a threat to initiate a process that would result in the Justice Department considering whether to charge him. GOP efforts to prosecute Fauci formed the basis of his refusal to answer questions Wednesday. Specifically, he cited Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Chair Paul Rand's years-long attacks against him. Fauci claimed the Kentucky Republican was trying to get me to say something, anything that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, behind bars. But the key difference is what Biden did. On his way out of office, Biden issued preemptive pardons for Fauci and others targeted by incoming President Trump, while citing signs the new administration and its allies might try to drum up prosecutions against them. That fear that has been legitimized given the Trump Justice Department's efforts to target Trump foes based on often flimsy evidence. And Fauci, the former director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, was not only pardoned, he received a very broad pardon that covered virtually anything related to his government service between 2014 and 2025. That means Fauci is immune from prosecution for many of the potential alleged crimes Paul and the committee's Republicans could try to link him to from the COVID era. But Fauci indicated he was invoking the fifth because he feared Republicans would try to lay a perjury trap, try to get him to say something that could be used during a perjury case against him. Indeed, some prominent figures had spoken before the hearing about Fauci possibly still being prosecuted for perjury, despite his pardon. They included Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. and conservative lawyer John Wu, who both suggested as much in interviews on Fox News. While Fauci's medical advice during the COVID pandemic had been roundly criticized by Republicans, there is little to link him to criminal activity, and polling earlier this year showed a majority of Americans still had confidence in him. But whether it's enough for Fauci to plead the fifth and be done with it is a major unanswered question. There is a tension between Fifth Amendment protections and Congress's investigative authority, and witnesses who claim they are protected from answering questions can be called upon to testify that in court and can be held in contempt. Former advisor Steve Bannon invoked executive privilege to avoid testifying about efforts to overturn the 2020 election. He was later convicted of contempt of Congress and sentenced to 4 months in prison when the courts rejected his claim. The Trump DOJ has since sought to dismiss his conviction. Paul signaled Wednesday that he was scheduling a contempt vote for Fauci and his committee for next week, saying, "It's against the law to obstruct an investigation of Congress. There will be repercussions for your refusal to testify." Even if the panel votes to hold him in contempt, an actual referral to the Justice Department requires a majority of the full Senate, and that vote would have to clear a filibuster. That means Paul would need a handful of Democrats to get on board and follow through, or convince someone to take up the cause in the House, where it only requires a simple majority. While there's a long way to go before Fauci potential charges, some legal experts say his claim to the Fifth Amendment here could be dicey. Whether that concern about prosecution is sufficient to support a Fifth Amendment invocation would ultimately be for a court to decide, said former federal prosecutor Dania Perry. She added, Fauci would point to Paul's repeated accusations and threats as evidence that the prospect of prosecution was concrete rather than speculative, even if he believed any such prosecution would ultimately fail. Mark Osler, a law professor at University of St. Thomas, wrote in an email that pardon would seem to cover Fauci's previous congressional testimony prior to January 19, 2025. Thus, he can't assert the fifth based on the fact that he may be asked questions that reveal his prior testimony as false, or at least subject to such a change. But Osler said Fauci could argue his pardon has some holes that could be exploited, such as conduct that occurred before 2014 or that didn't relate to his government service. CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig wagered that Fauci would have a strong claim not to just because of time limit of the pardon, but also because he could fear being prosecuted for potential state crimes which aren't covered by federal pardon. He certainly can take the fifth if he has exposure outside of the pardon, which he certainly does, she said. If courts found that Fifth Amendment protections didn't apply to Fauci's testimony, he could conceivably agree to testify at that point and avoid possible contempt charges.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 15 minutes past the hour, and we will now go to our editorial. A fair hearing. Expanding immigration detention while shrinking opportunities for in-person hearings reflects a troubling shift in priorities. Justice requires proceedings that are accessible, transparent, and worthy of public trust. The Justice Department's Executive Office for Immigration Review announced last week that it will close the immigration courtrooms at the Department of Homeland Security's detention center in Batavia, even as the federal government is moving to expand detention capacity there. Further proceedings will be conducted virtually. The administration argues that expanding virtual courtrooms will increase capacity and allow judges from around the country to hear cases. Capacity matters, but these hearings often determine whether someone will be deported or allowed to remain in the United States. A Department of Homeland Security spokesperson said judges routinely hear cases from across the country and that the expansion, quote, is a testament to Immigration and Customs Enforcement's commitment to due process for all illegal aliens in custody. But replacing face-to-face interaction with online proceedings can make a big difference and not for the better. Jillian Nowak, an immigration attorney with Prisoners Legal Services of New York, said those hearings make it harder for clients to establish credibility, often a critical factor in asylum and other immigration cases. Nowak makes another important point. Virtual hearings can make it more difficult to determine whether people with cognitive or other disabilities fully understand the proceedings or can meaningfully participate in them. Technological issues such as poor microphone performance further frustrate the communication process for detainees and judges. In proceedings where credibility, comprehension, and effective communication can determine whether someone is allowed to remain in the U.S., subtle cues and direct interaction matter. Video technology is an imperfect substitute for appearing before a judge in person. The timing is concerning. The closure of the Batavia courtroom comes weeks after Homeland Security announced plans to expand the detention center by another 100 beds. It is part of a broader effort to increase immigration detention capacity nationwide. Representative Tim Kennedy characterized the move as the Trump administration putting politics ahead of due process. In the letter to DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen, Kennedy called on the department to halt the expansion. Earlier in the month, Governor Kathy Hochul asked Mullen to speak with her about reports that his agency plans to expand a federal immigration detention facility in Batavia and install new detention cells in Rochester and Newburgh. And Nowak said she was told by an employee at the detention center that the closure was due to the demand for space for detainees as the federal government's immigration crackdown has continued. If so, then it reflects a troubling choice, sacrificing courtroom space to accommodate more detainees. Due process should never be minimized to expand detention. Virtual hearings may have a place in certain circumstances, but should not become the norm to expand detention space. If the federal government is willing to expand its capacity to detain immigrants, it should be equally willing to preserve the fairness and integrity of the judicial process those detainees deserve.
From another voice, LGBTQ plus rights. It's written by Jack Kavanaugh, who is the executive director of the GLYS Western New York and the Pride Center of Western New York. New York continues to support transgender youth. At first glance, nothing changed today for transgender youth in Buffalo or New York State. Nationally, it's another story. Recently, the Supreme Court ruled in Little versus Haycox and West Virginia versus BPJ that state laws barring trans girls from girls' school sports teams violate neither the Constitution Equal Protection Clause nor Title 19. States are now free to exclude transgender athletes from women's and girls' teams. This was not a good faith effort to protect girls' sports. It is one more step into the ideological power grab that will threaten the rights of all women, especially those who don't fit anti-trans activists' narrow idea of how a woman should look and act. Consider Emmanuel, an Olympic gold medalist targeted by false claims about her sex. Behind these campaigns against trans athletes is a long-term effort to undermine LGBTQ+ rights across the board. In just the last few years, hundreds of bills targeting trans youth have been introduced. Each one, including the laws upheld in this decision, feeds a coordinated push to force transgender people out of public life. Remember, this is not a new question. Individual school athletic associations have set case-by-case policies for decades. And though it touches only a tiny fraction of athletes, the issue draws outsized attention, at times more than concerns that affect us all, like affordable health care or the rising cost of living. What the court did was to strip away a baseline of protection. It did not order any state to ban trans kids from sports. It simply removed the constitutional floor that once stopped states from doing so. A young person's rights now depend on which state they happen to live in. That is exactly why New York matters. Our state and Erie County can remain a haven for transgender youth and can keep putting policies in place that support their well-being. Everyone across all races, backgrounds, and genders deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. As efforts to roll back LGBTQ+ rights continue, we have a responsibility to protect the most vulnerable among us, our children. Anyone who wants to help can reach GLYSWNY at executive@glys.org. We will keep showing our kids, all of our kids, that we stand up for their right to exist as their true selves. And our editorial cartoon today is from Steve Kelly of Creators Syndicate. It's a husband and wife sitting on their couch reading a paper. And the paper's headline is COVID Hearings. And the man says to the woman, subpoena diary entries reveal that pandemic, the most dramatic gain of function, occurred in Dr. Fauci's ego. And now to our first opinion piece from Anthony Pawnke of Progressive Perspectives. Data center issue can empower rural areas. The race to be Wisconsin's next governor is a microcosm of developments around the country. The race features politicians from both parties pandering to rural voters. In one campaign ad, U.S. Representative Tom Tiffany, the frontrunner for the Republican nomination in the state's August 11 primary, walks a cow with a halter to display rural authenticity. One of the Democrats vying for the job, State Representative Francesca Hong, part of the party's insurgent Democratic Socialist wing, showed up at a farm to celebrate June Dairy Month. Somewhat awkwardly, her photo op was with beef cattle, not dairy cattle. Forced attempts to resonate with voters aside, Tiffany, Hong, and other candidates in the race have been taking positions on an issue that is seriously affecting rural people in Wisconsin and elsewhere. If rural Wisconsinites played their cards right, they could use this moment of bipartisan concern to push for real changes, making candidates commit to initiatives around economics and infrastructure. For many people who call the countryside home, Data centers have become the obtrusive physical manifestation of the latest tech industry development. With a few centers already operating in the state and others in the works, proponents claim these massive, sometimes 1,000 plus acre installations bring jobs and fuel economic growth. Opponents, especially the people seeing these massive centers appear in their areas, denounce them for increasing energy bills, draining water, threatening farmland, and negatively impacting air quality. Opponents also cite financial risks to the municipalities that host data centers. In short, data center development appears to be the latest corporate scheme to extract resources without consulting the people impacted. As such, ongoing grassroots mobilizations that challenge data center development constitute attempts to make our economy a little more democratic. That data centers are emerging so quickly is due in no small measure to how rural areas have been ravaged economically. Farm consolidation in Wisconsin, for instance, has seen the number of dairy farms drop from about 45,000 in 1980 to just over 5,000 in 2026. Nationwide, since 2000, the number of dairy farms has fallen by 71%, with about 500,000 operations going out of business. Consider the Trump administration's One Big Beautiful Bill Act and its Medicare and Medicaid cuts that contributed to closing rural hospitals. All the while, the tariff regime and Iran war quagmire raises farmers' costs by disrupting markets and increasing the cost of inputs like fertilizer. In terms of positive proposals that candidates could champion, they could voice support for the dairy farmers with the recently introduced Milk from Family Dairies Act. This legislation could keep farmers on the land by assuring a stable, fair price for producers, especially small-scale operators. Candidates should also be pressed on improving rural infrastructure, which includes decent schools and adequate internet access. In the context of such disputes, rural people deserve to hear real commitments for positive change. Those running for governor in Wisconsin or any other office around the country need our votes. It's time we make our candidates earn them.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 28 minutes past the hour, and we will move on to our second opinion piece. This is written by Mark Gongloff, and he is from Bloomberg Opinion. Squashed clean tech opportunities are costing the U.S. billions. Ever wonder about the financial implications of your life choices? Taking one job over another, spending Christmas with your nephew instead of working through it at your financial firm? That time Bitcoin fell to $400 and instead of filling your boots with the stuff, you wrote a column mocking it? We've all been there, right? Such decisions expose us to what economists call opportunity costs. Christmas dinner with Fred keeps the ghosts away, but also robs you of the opportunity to make more money. Not buying Bitcoin in 2014 cost no money and made you feel smart for about 2 years. But missing out on the chance to buy Bitcoin at bargain prices actually cost several $1 million in the long run. The country is in the early stages of a colossal example of opportunity cost because of President Trump's relentless assault on clean energy. Unlike not buying Bitcoin, taxpayers have already borne steep upfront costs for this policy, which mainly serves the fossil fuel industry, but the real economic pain has just begun. Between his executive orders, regulatory rollbacks, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and more, Trump has slashed or eliminated tax breaks for renewable projects, canceled permits and ended government programs and regulations that encourage cleaner energy. He has even spent billions of dollars just to persuade companies not to build wind farms. This assault has already canceled or delayed 223 manufacturing, energy, and industrial projects in the U.S. so far, worth $82.8 billion, according to a report by the Blue-Green Alliance, a nonprofit advocacy group that represents labor unions and environmentalists. That could mean a loss of 111,765 jobs, including nearly 57,000 in construction and more than 47,000 in factories. And that's just what's already on the books. The tax break restrictions imposed by legislation threaten to end or delay an additional 3,034 projects worth a potential $695 billion in capital spending and nearly 1.2 million jobs. Faced with rapidly approaching deadlines to qualify for breaks, many of these developers could decide it's not worth the trouble. Losing these investments and jobs will ripple through the economy for years. People will miss out on jobs that might have paid them more than they're making now. Some will stay unemployed, and these projects would have supported other industries during their construction and operation. The hundreds of developments that have so far been canceled, closed, or downsized because of Trump's energy policies will cost the U.S. $55 billion in lost economic growth every year, according to a study by the consulting firm BW Research on behalf of E2, a nonprofit advocacy group. That's on top of the $91 billion already thrown away because of canceled construction. BW expects the loss of these projects to cost the U.S. economy 468,000 jobs, including 125,000 construction jobs in the long run. That's only slightly fewer jobs than the U.S. economy has produced during Trump's entire second term. American workers will lose $31 billion in annual wages in the process. Federal, state, and local governments will lose $12 billion in annual tax revenue, along with $20 billion in taxes on construction. Another way of measuring this opportunity cost is to consider what the Inflation Reduction Act would have given the economy had Trump not effectively ended it. An initial $740 billion tax credit investment would have resulted in $3.8 trillion in private spending, $846 billion in household savings, 13.7 million jobs, and $1.9 trillion added to the GDP, according to a study by the research firm ICF, commissioned by the American Clean Power Association and Advocacy Group. An MIT study, in contrast, predicted the IRA would have small quantitative macroeconomic effects, including a small decline in headline inflation, but still called it cost-effective. These are just the first-hand, maybe second-order economic effects of losing these projects. The higher-order costs threaten to be much far bigger. Energy efficiency gains that pack exponentially more financial punch than their initial investment would ever be realized. A menu of easily attainable tweaks could save the economy $5 trillion through 2050 by one estimate. Trump and his allies in Congress are trying to block them. Greenhouse gas emissions will enter the atmosphere that might otherwise not have, making the planet hotter. This will compound an already large and growing problem of increasingly chaotic weather, which has cost the U.S. economy $7.25 trillion over the past decade, according to Bloomberg Intelligence. Much of that money has been thrown at home insurance, the price of which has soared 46% since 2021, or 3 times the rate of inflation, according to the comparison site Insurify. American workers have lost more than $1 trillion in wages because of wildfire smoke alone since 2020, BI has estimated. The good news is that the clean energy revolution has carried on in defiance of Trump's attacks. It helps that renewables are relatively cheap and quick to install at a time of soaring energy prices and demand. Solar power recently provided more U.S. electricity than coal for the first month ever. Solar and battery storage capacity made up 91% of all new additions to the grid in the first quarter of this year, a record. But imagine how much healthier and more prosperous this country and the world would be without Trump's whole-of-government approach to propping up a fossil fuel industry in slow decline. Missed opportunities often brings pangs of regret, and this pain will be deep and lasting.
And our final opinion from Clarence Page of the Tribune Content Agency. Is the Smithsonian racist? MAGA makes its case in Newspeak. The country is in the early stages of a colossal example of opportunity cost. If you haven't heard that the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History is a hotbed of anti-white activism, illegal alien activism, and transgender activism, the Trump administration and its MAGA allies in Congress have some news for you. You can read all about it in what news accounts have called a scathing 162-page report released July 4th by the White House. It accuses the museum and its leaders of presenting a radical view of American history. Such was the language used by Representative Tim Burchett, the Tennessee Republican who chairs the House Subcommittee on Delivering on Government Efficiency, in his opening remarks to a hearing titled Rewriting American History, examining the Smithsonian's efforts to reshape the past, although the reshaping amounted to a few choice sound bites. Burchett claimed the National Museum is pushing radical left-wing narratives, a view that echoed President Trump's earlier claims. Burchett also noted that these narratives are driven by National Museum Director Anthea Hartig, who believes that history is a prime tool of social justice, as if that's a bad thing. MAGA's rhetorical lexicon is full of terms the movement has appropriated from the left, such as social justice, which they endow with axiomatically bad connotations. Social justice warriors rank next to wokeness among the threats supposedly posed by the left. Seeing lawmakers meet to decide whose versions of history is permissible reminds me of what the scholarly Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart said about censorship. It reflects a society's lack of confidence in itself. It is a hallmark of an authoritarian regime. Heaven help us. Although the Smithsonian Institute oversees dozens of museums and libraries, plus galleries, historical landmarks, and the National Zoo, the White House particularly takes aim at its National Museum of American History. The report accuses the museum's leadership of adopting an ideological framework that no longer treats the American story as a shared national inheritance to be taught or celebrated, but as a political instrument to divide, dispirit, and discourage our citizens. That's pretty grim, and I'm sure Trump approves. The report is written in language designed to conceal as much it reveals. It reminds me, as bureaucratic documents often do, of the rules and manufactured truth decreed by Big Brother in the authoritarian newspeak of George Orwell's dystopian novel, 1984. Gems like anti-white activism and illegal alien activism don't rise to Orwell's artfulness, but they are newspeak nonetheless. It's nonsense, but it excites cohorts of voters to your side, and depending on how you play it and which podcasters you enlist in the effort, it can gel into political orthodoxy. And when your polls are sinking, as Trump's have been, the midterm calamity appears to be coming for the ruling party. Another insult will do in a pinch. Museum Director Hartig cordially answered questions from two separate House committees about what the report describes as the ideological capture of the Smithsonian. To their credit, some Democrats pushed back on the GOP newspeak with blazing rhetoric of their own. Welcome to the Republicans' White Pride rally disguised as a congressional hearing, Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas declared at the proceeding. History is to be argued. A scholarly history teacher taught us in grade school. A lot of Americans, for example, still believe the South won the Civil War, she said, or should have. And that's why, even if the study and practice of historical scholarship is inherently political, it should not follow rules set by hardball partisan politics. Historical debates between scholars can be contentious enough without the interference of the House DOJ subcommittee. Diversity is our strength, as I long have maintained, although MAGA militants deem that the little chestnut to be heresy. Are you listening, Stephen Miller? For more than 180 years, the Smithsonian has served the American public with nonpartisan and independent scholarship, and we remain committed to doing so. Good. History is about the future. Wise teachers have told me, not just the next election.
And we will go to our health and finance section. I on iron. Should women over 60 seek out supplements? This is written by Maureen Salomon from the Harvard Health Publishing. With menopause comes the end of monthly menstrual bleeding and the regular loss of iron this process entails. But many women over 60 may wonder if they still need an extra quota of the mineral, popping iron supplements just in case. Yet too much iron can be as problematic for our health as too little, a Harvard expert says. Without sufficient iron, we can't make enough red blood cells, which carry oxygen to every part of the body. This condition is called iron deficiency anemia, which affects up to 17% of Americans 65 and older, according to the American Society of Hematology. Some older women assume they have anemia merely because they feel fatigued and sluggish, the condition's hallmark symptoms. But Dr. Susan Salomon, the clinical chief of gerontology at Harvard-affiliated Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, urges them to dig deeper. We're born with a certain amount of iron in the body, and it's carried in the blood cells. When blood cells die, the iron is reused, she explains. So if your iron level starts to get low, you need to figure out why. Menstruating women need more iron to replace blood lost through periods, which is why the recommended dietary allowance for women up to age 50 is 18 milligrams daily. But after menopause, the RDA for the iron drops to just 8 milligrams for women 51 and older. Pregnant women should get 27 milligrams of iron daily. After menopause, you're just like a man. You shouldn't be losing iron. But a variety of situations and conditions, some of them stealthy, can lead to low iron or iron loss. They include gastrointestinal bleeding from ulcers, colon polyps, diverticulitis, diverticulosis, or cancer. Celiac disease or gastric bypass surgery, which can lead to problems absorbing nutrients. Kidney disease, certain medications that hinder iron absorption. Vegetarian or vegan diets that don't include iron-fortified foods. It's possible you may be eating enough iron, but you may not be absorbing it well enough, she said. But when I see someone with iron deficiency, there's usually something wrong, often blood loss. If you're losing iron, it's likely you'll feel the effects. Signs of iron deficiency can include pale skin, fatigue, shortness of breath, weight loss, chest pain. But don't decide on your own to take iron supplements or multivitamins that contain iron if you're having any of these symptoms. It's crucial to get to the bottom of why they're happening, Solomon says. Your doctor will likely perform tests to do so. Testing can be a way we find colon or stomach cancer or another reason for blood loss, she said. If you're taking iron, it can mask the problem. Taking iron supplements unnecessarily also can lead to problems of its own. Too much iron in the body, called iron overload, can damage the heart, liver, pancreas, and other major organs as well as the joints. Signs of iron overload may include joint pain, fatigue, and abdominal pain, nonspecific symptoms that can also occur with other conditions. The body just doesn't get rid of iron if there's too much of it. It can really accumulate, Salomon says. It's fine to take if you're deficient once you've figured out what's causing that. Healthy women 60 and older can usually meet their needs through food, and the body absorbs iron from food more effectively than iron from supplements. Foods rich in iron include lean red meat, poultry, fish, beans, lentils, spinach, and fortified cereals. If you still need more, which supplements can deliver? Various types line drugstore shelves, including ferrous sulfate and ferrous gluconate. While both are used to treat iron deficiency anemia, ferrous sulfate is generally the better choice since it is better absorbed by the body. Ferrous sulfate has more side effects, but it gives you a bigger bang for the buck. You get a lot more iron in it, she said. But ferrous gluconate is the option if side effects from ferrous sulfate, such as nausea, diarrhea, or constipation, prove problematic. Some studies suggest it is better to take iron pills every other day instead of every day, both to minimize side effects and to improve absorption. Iron infusions also are available by prescription for people who experience severe side effects from supplements, she notes.
Lancaster manufacturer kicks off $13 million expansion. A Lancaster manufacturer that got its start over 63 years ago in the founder's Alden house and then in a small warehouse is now embarking on its latest major expansion that will increase the size of its growing 12.6-acre campus. That will enable it to meet both current demand for its customers as well as anticipated growth, particularly in the military and aerospace sectors, where the company is seeking new contracts, new capabilities, new customers, and a new product development, including to protect drones, Sealing Devices President Elizabeth Galanis said. Our military and aerospace business has really picked up. A lot of new programs have come through the government to us as far as defense, a lot of space programs, and a lot of different industries that maybe we traditionally haven't been fully involved in. The $13 million project is one of the largest capital improvements in the company's history, demonstrating its commitment to manufacturing in Western New York, and particularly in Lancaster. We always want to be able to maneuver with whatever our customers are coming to us with, and we never want to say no, said Galanis, granddaughter of Sealing Devices founder. We want to keep growing to expand the business and expand the footprint. That expansion will result in more jobs as well as tax base for New York.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need any further information on these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Gojmerak John. Hood Reverend Michael A. Mang Teresa K. Ni Karaga, Roddy Gray, Helen M. Todaro, Gary A. Sr. Also nationally, Betty Saar, an artist who transformed collections of bigoted bric-a-brac into potential works of assemblage that mined the searing history of race in the United States and whose works influenced generations of artists, has died, and she was 99. A diminutive woman with a low-key manner that belied a steely resolve, Sarr was known for combing garage sales, flea markets, and junk piles for objects that she employed in collages and assemblages large and small. These explored difficult aspects of American history, including slavery and Jim Crow, but has also touched on family, memory, magic, and spirituality. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
And now let's see what the Royal Stars have in store for us. Happy birthday for Thursday, July 30th, 2026. You are grounded, practical, and motivated. Excuse me. You're also logical and valuable, tangible progress. This is a slower paced year. It's okay to rest. And remember, each star is given what kind of a day you're going to have. 5 stars, dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, 1 difficult. Aries, 4 stars. You'll enjoy hanging out with friends and interacting with clubs and organizations today. You might initiate something or spur others into a game of sports or some kind of competitive or physical activity. Tonight, fun schmoozing. Taurus, a 3-star day. You're high vis today, and it's a good thing because people see you as a proactive and ready to initiate something. This could relate to home and family, or might be about social outings. Tonight, be modest. Gemini, a 4-star day. Travel and a chance to do something to expand your world will appeal to you today. Be a tourist in your own city. Tonight, learn something. Cancer, a 3-star day. On the whole, this is a favorable financial day for you. Nevertheless, something might occur behind the scenes that relates to shared property or someone else's wealth. Tonight, check your finances. Leo, a 4-star day. Your enthusiasm might inspire others to take action today. They also might join you or join a club at your recommendation. Tonight, be gracious. Virgo, a 3-star day. You can get a lot done today because you're motivated to do so. Others can see that you're ready for action. Tonight, work and get organized. Libra, a 4-star day. This is a lovely day to socialize. Accept invitations to party. The arts, movies, the theater, and sports will appeal. Tonight, play. Scorpio, a 3-star day. Family discussions will be lively and dynamic today, which is fine for you because you make such a great impression on others at this time. You might be successful in persuading someone to give their help, resources, or money to your home and family. Tonight, relax. Sagittarius, a 4-star day. This is a wonderful day for those of you in sales, marketing, teaching, acting, and writing. You will be persuasive and convincing. You're enthusiastic about life today and ready to share your ideas. Tonight, discussions. Capricorn, a 3-star day. Finances have your attention today. You may be interested in shopping or spending money. Enjoy the company of someone different today. Tonight, check your money. Aquarius, a 4-star day. You might assume the role of leader, especially if you want to start something new or initiate some kind of action. It's good to know that funding and helpful resources from others will be available. Tonight, friendships. And finally, Pisces, a 3-star day. If you set your mind to it, you can accomplish much today because you're motivated. You have a lot of inner drive to make some changes, perhaps improvements at home. Meanwhile, playful, romantic discussions might take place tonight. You're admired.
And today in history, in 1956, the phrase "In God We Trust" became the national motto of the United States after President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed a joint resolution by Congress. The phrase was to appear on all forms of American currency. In 1965, in a landmark moment for health care, President Lyndon Johnson signed amendments to the Social Security Act of 1935 into law, creating two federal health programs, Medicare and Medicaid. In 1975, Teamsters union leader Jimmy Hoffa disappeared in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, never to be heard from again. And in 2003, the classic Volkswagen Beetle rolled off the last classic Volkswagen Beetle rolled off the production line in a Pueblo plant in Mexico. SpaceX gets $1.6 billion in government contracts. SpaceX won $1.6 billion in orders Wednesday from the U.S. Space Force to launch 18 Falcon 9 missions through 2027, carrying Pentagon satellites for detecting and targeting airborne objects, the service said. The 18 missions were assigned to SpaceX across two task orders under the U.S. Space Force's flagship launch procurement program, in which SpaceX, United Launch Alliance, Blue Origin, and other U.S. launch firms inducted into the program jockey for lucrative mission assignments. SpaceX bagged at least $7 billion worth of Pentagon contracts this year as the Trump administration laid groundwork for its Golden Dome missile defense shield, a roughly $185 billion multi-year endeavor heavily featuring Elon Musk's launch and satellite company. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Thursday, July 30th, on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Pat Lamont
and Ruth Nowotniak.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont. And now let's see what's happening in the city and region. City works to tackle budget woes as agencies degrade bond rating. Fitch's ratings downgrade the City of Buffalo's bond rating is only the latest in a series of negative developments for Buffalo's financial picture. The ratings downgrade announced in the news release from City Controller Barbara Miller-Williams on Monday is the third negative report from the three major rating agencies in recent weeks. S&P Global Ratings earlier downgraded the city's bond rating, and last week Moody's announced it would not downgrade the bond rating but change the city's credit outlook from stable to negative. Fitch also downgraded the city's outlook from stable to negative. As the other agencies did, Fitch cited the city's depleted reserve funds and continued reliance on one-time revenues in city budgets as major contributing factors to the downgrade. Mayor Sean Ryan and the Common Council agreed to one of the largest tax levy increases in memory, 19%, in this year's budget, bringing a significant influx of revenue to the city. Ryan's four-year plan includes more modest increases in the coming years and a plan to replenish fund balances. The ratings agency in its report said the city could reserve its outlook and bond rating if it is able to rebuild fund balances and stop using one-time revenues to balance its budget. Deputy Mayor Benjamin Swanekamp said that the ratings and outlook downgrades are the results of past decisions and that the agencies will want to see proof that the Ryan administration's plans are working. They know positive changes are part of the 26-27 budget and our willingness to dramatically increase revenue and are taking steps to stabilize things. But they want to see those unassigned fund balance and rainy day fund. They want to see reserves going back up again, he said. Michael Corey, an economics professor at the University of Buffalo, said the agencies can base their ratings on only what has already happened. The city has taken positive steps to right the financial ship, but many uncertainties remain. While the city has raised the tax levy significantly and increased the amount of taxes, fees, and fines in arrears it plans to collect, it still has to show the ratings agencies that it can make good on collecting that money. They may be looking to see actual concrete revenue stream rather than just the legal passage of the property tax increase, said Corey. Swanekamp said the city is still pursuing the ability to borrow through the control board to get better terms and lower interest rates on bonds. An effort to get a bill passed by the state legislature that would have expanded the city's ability to borrow through the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority fell short last year. Swanekamp said the administration plans to again work with legislators to introduce a bill allowing for the city to borrow more money through the control board, which has a gold standard bond rating and would save the city money on borrowing. However, the city plans to narrow the scope of the legislation, taking out the portions that would allow for debt borrowing, only allowing the city to borrow for capital projects, including emergency repairs to buildings that are considered life and safety risks for workers and the public. While the amount the city will pay in additional interest is small in the total scope of the budget, it is enough that it could represent the funding for several city positions and should concern city officials. What this does is provides a wake-up call to the city that hopefully helps generate the political will, both at the mayoral level and also among citizens, to continue raising taxes and looking for ways to reduce spending and make those hard choices that the city needs to make. Fillmore District Common Council member Mitch Nowakowski, who chairs the Finance Committee, has asked Moody's for an explanation of the downgrade following that agency's shift to negative outlook for the city. He said council members are expected to be briefed privately by people from Moody's when they return from August recess. Representatives from Miller Williams' office answered questions on the downgrade Tuesday, and Nowakowski said he plans to bring them back to committee for further discussions. We have additional work with the mayor's administration for future budgets so that the rating agencies ultimately fall in line to move us stable, because that's the ultimate goal, said Nowakowski.
Driver who fled police is again on the lam after release from ECMC. And this is written by Aaron Biesecker, who is a news staff reporter. Police are trying to locate the man who fled from them and crashed on the Interstate 190 on July 23rd after they say he was released from Erie County Medical Center without officers being notified. Hospital staff told Town of Niagara Police that Dwight M. Wilson would be at the hospital long-term for evaluation, but no one notified police when doctors discharged him early Friday morning, Town of Niagara Police Captain Kelly Adderman said. No time frame was given by hospital staff for the medical evaluation period, Adderman said. Peter Cutler, spokesman for ECMC, said Wilson was treated in the emergency department and discharged by about 1 a.m. on Friday. Cutler acknowledged Town of Niagara Police were in contact with hospital police. We've been informed that a request was made for a courtesy notification of his discharge, and his discharge occurred prior to that notification being made, Cutler said. Cutler declined to comment further. Before the pursuit, Wilson, 26 of Buffalo, was already wanted on 2 bench warrants for failure to appear in Town of Niagara Court and a separate arrest warrant from the Erie County Sheriff's Office. Town of Niagara Police had also planned to charge Wilson in connection with the pursuit that began at the fashion outlets of Niagara Falls, USA, and ended when the tires on Wilson's vehicle blew out after striking a guardrail on I-190 in the town of Tonawanda, just south of the Grand Island Bridges. During part of the pursuit, which involved 4 responding police agencies, Wilson caused several near head-on collisions when he drove the wrong way on the northbound lanes of the I-190, police previously said. After the incident, police were notified by 2 drivers who said their vehicles were sideswiped by Wilson during the pursuit. Adderman said while the hospital staff was under no legal obligation to notify the police when Wright had been released, her department is small and is unable to have officers stay at the hospital for an undetermined period of time.
Explore More plans expansion upgrades. Michelle Urbanzik, CEO of Explore More, the Ralph Wilson Jr. Children's Museum, recalled a tour she once gave Governor Kathy Hochul amid the ringing laughter of children in a bustling museum filled with families. Hochul noted the museum was too small to hold all the visitors clamoring to pay. It's a good problem to have, Urbanzik said. It's a problem the museum will soon begin to alleviate. In the coming second phase of its construction plans, the museum plans to make more room for new programming starting this fall, it announced Wednesday. The museum will take out its moving water exhibit on the second floor in favor of a temporary exhibit space. It will also construct a 3rd floor over the current exhibit space to form a creativity lab and classroom and enclose its 4th floor terrace for year-round use. Opening in mid-September, the temporary exhibit gallery will host Science Plus You, an interactive exhibit exploring the importance of science when it comes to health and wellness. The price tag is estimated at around $3 million. Explore More, which recently placed 5th in USA Today's 10 Best Reader's Choice Awards rankings of the nation's best children's museums, just finished a $2 million construction project that began in 2023 and included security upgrades, an updated lobby with new guest services and gift shop areas, an expansion of the third floor renovations to the Low Bridge Cafe, new exhibits on each floor, and updated graphics. The centerpiece of the upgrades is a lifetime timeline of namesake and patron Ralph C. Wilson Jr.'s life found in the lobby, including such artifacts as a treasured trophy he received when he was 12 years old and a letter from Wilson to his father. It was really hard for me to give it up, said Wilson's widow, Mary Wilson. And when Michelle told me her thought was to put it on the wall to explain to people who Ralph is, I was just blown away. The upcoming Science and You exhibit will feature a pint-sized laboratory where children will interact with machinery, scientific processes, and technology to learn about science's role in body health. There will also be a demonstration area for visiting scientists to perform scientific experiments. The exhibit was created in Illinois by Cole Children's Museum of Greater Chicago. It has traveled to museums in Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Germany, and Brazil since its inception in 2011. It will be on display from September 26th to January 9th. It will be followed by another temporary exhibit including Hero Quest, Storyland, and Monsters on Vacation. Moving Water has been in operation for 7 years and explores the way Western New York harnessed the city's sports, canal, and harbor to fuel the city's prosperity and innovation. The museum will send it off with Last Splash event August 29th and 30th before demolition in September to prepare for the next phase of construction. The museum is debt-free, having paid off its loans 2 years ahead of schedule, said Karen Utz, Regional Director of Empire State Development. She called the museum a great joy come to life. You are out of space because the community loves you, she said. I just want to add, I had the opportunity to visit about 2 weeks ago, and what a magnificent place. We took great-grandchildren, but I remember taking my children to the Strong Museum and how much they loved it. So this is just a real gift, and take advantage of it. Grandmas and grandpas and mom and dads, it's a real gift, so don't pass it up. And you were listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 14 minutes after the hour, and we will move on to sports and training day. And Lance Lasowski's article, despite damp conditions, General Manager, I was right the first time. Okay, I take it back. Despite damp condition, team shows new energy with Brady in charge. Heavy raindrops pattered on the white vinyl tent above Joe Brady's head, filling each brief period of silence as the new coach of the Buffalo Bills fielded reporters' questions for 17 minutes early Wednesday morning. His players' uniforms got saturated during their short walk from the Bills' locker room at St. John Fisher University to the Kentucky Bluegrass Field, on which Brady will hold 7 practices across 10 days. The temperature was just 67 degrees. The footballs were so slick that most running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and defensive backs chose not to wear gloves. The weather for the first practice of Brady's first training camp in charge of the Bills may have been the worst the franchise has seen in his 25 years staying on the 164-acre campus near Rochester. Even if Brady could have called in a favor to Mother Nature, he wouldn't have changed the miserable condition. Who says it's a crappy day? The NFL's youngest head coach asked reporters. Like it's football, there is never a bad day to play football. Brady's attire wasn't different than what we were accustomed to seeing during his 2+ seasons as the Bills' offensive coordinator. A short sleeve t-shirt with black athletic shorts and a Bills ball cap. His quarterbacks, including the face of the franchise, Josh Allen, heard friendly trash talk from Brady, yet the coach reminded everyone before and during day one that it's a new era. Before he led a training camp practice, Brady, 36, had to reinforce the standard he established shortly after the Bills hired him in January to replace Sean McDermott. C.J. Gardner Johnson, hard-hitting, trash-talking, ball-hawking safety who was on his 7th team in 8 seasons, made the mistake Tuesday of hosting a live stream on his cell phone inside the team's training room. He was still broadcasting when viewers heard Brady calmly scold him for the error in judgment. Brady downplayed the interaction, so did Gardner Johnson, but the moment gave everyone on the outside a glimpse at the accountability Brady plans to bring to his first head coaching job at any level of football. Historically, internal hires have struggled in the NFL. The 21 assistants promoted between 2006 and 2024 seasons posted a composite .423 winning percentage. Of those 21 coaches, 11 lasted fewer than 3 seasons. Only one reached the Super Bowl, and he lost the game. Skeptics cited the overwhelming enthusiasm Bills players expressed this spring about the environment around their practice facility with Brady as head coach. Pundits question whether he will be firm enough when the moment calls for discipline. Brady's boss, general manager and president of football operations, Brandon Beane, has noticed a shift, however, in the way Brady operates as the head coach. He can be firm, Beane said. He's a good guy, but he will be firm. I saw him jump some dudes today. I think he's got a good balance. There will be ups and downs in camp. There will be ups and downs as we build this team. And obviously, in a 17-game season, there will be some ups and downs. He'll have tests along the way, but I thought he did for a first-year head coach. He had a great plan. He's not coming and saying things didn't work out, I'm going to blow it up. He's saying there's a lot of things that we've done well, and I want to put my own tweak on it and make it the way I think how we can go win a championship. The first change Brady made was to the Bills' schedule. Practice begins at 8:30 a.m., approximately 45 minutes earlier than McDermott's preferred starting time. Brady's logic: why wait around for half the morning, and why force everyone to eat lunch and dinner later? An earlier start time will create more opportunity for afternoon meetings. Surveying players and assistant coaches influence the decision. Fans based near Rochester are not happy about Brady cutting back on the number of practices at St. John Fisher, but he decided it doesn't make sense to come back to Pittsburgh following return of the red and blue scrimmage at the new Highmark Stadium. After witnessing injury-plagued training camps the past 2 years, Brady has collaborated with the team's sports science experts to find more efficient ways to prepare his team for the season. Staying in Orchard Park will allow Brady and his staff to introduce the players, especially newcomers and rookies, to a game week routine. He has adopted some of McDermott's methods, though. Greg Rousseau was reminded midway through practice that the head coach is going to yell if you get anywhere near Allen. McDermott had no patience for his defensive players getting near his superstar quarterback. The practice, albeit without pads, had a fast-paced and physical feel. There were no long breaks between periods, and though Brady's personality is down to earth compared to McDermott's, several players caught the fire of Bill's new coach. Mistakes by the offense, including drop passes and pre-snap errors, frustrated Brady. It didn't come across to players as forceful or disingenuous either. Everyone on offense saw it from Brady for the past 2+ seasons. As play caller, he demanded perfection. The attention to perfection that he pushed on players contributed to Buffalo ranking second in points per game and total touchdowns with Brady as the play caller since November 2024. I know Joe extremely well, but in terms of scheduling, we talked this earlier back about OTAs. The vibe, the energy, it's different, Allen said. I'm not saying it's better or worse, it's different. As a new head coach for a team, I think that's a smart decision to make things different. This isn't the same place. You have to make it feel differently because doing the same thing, it obviously didn't work. You have to change it up to find a way to make it work. Starting completely new wasn't necessary, and it's not, though Brady inherited a losing culture with a dysfunctional locker room. As he reminded everyone at his introductory press conference in late January, McDermott laid the foundation on which Brady will build. Twice, McDermott coached the Bills to the AFC Championship game in each of the past 6 seasons. They reached the AFC divisional round. For all his faults, especially during the most important games of the season, he became a known commodity with a proven track record. Nobody knows how Brady will do in this new role, but the people around him insist that his drive and passion will lead the Bills to new heights. Good going.
New faces are normal for UB football coach Lembo. This is written by Marquel Slaughter. With all of the new faces on University of Buffalo's football roster and coaching staff, Coach Pete Lembo is confident everyone will be on the same page come Tuesday. That is when the Bulls officially hit the field for preseason camp, with 6 new coaches taking over preparations for their September 3rd season and home opener against Albany. Among the new coaches are offensive coordinator Tony Tokarz and offensive line coach Cooper Williams, who arrived from Florida State. Before that, they coached together at Memphis, where they worked with Lembo in 2019. Orchard Park native and special teams coordinator Garrett McLaughlin arrived from Columbia. Defensive coordinator Brian Doherty was promoted. Lembo, whose Bulls went 5-7, 4-4 Mid-American Conference in 2025, is accustomed to the coaching carousel. I don't know that I've had a single year in 18 years now as head coach where I haven't had new faces on the coaching staff. Some years more than others. Lembo was Memphis's assistant head coach and special teams coordinator in 2019 when he worked with Williams and Tokarz. Williams played at Memphis from 2014 to 16, joined the coaching staff, and was promoted to offensive analyst by the time Lembo arrived. Williams then held coaching stints at Florida State and a stop in Missouri. Lembo complimented the rapport Williams already has built with everyone on UB's campus. UB's offensive linemen all told Lembo that Williams was tremendous in May. UB will have a brand new starting 5 on the line that Williams will be challenged with developing, though Lembo already has noted redshirt freshman Thomas Barr and senior Miami transfer Nino Francavilla as 2 starters on the interior. UB's most experienced lineman, Rochester's redshirt senior Alex Heiniger, is not expected to play this season, according to Lembo. Heiniger had multiple shoulder injuries this offseason and did not participate in spring camp. He popped his left shoulder in August of 2025 and managed to start 9 games at left guard. Tokarz was on the Seminoles staff in previous 6 seasons. Prior to FSU, he was the tight end coach at Memphis with Lembo and Williams in 2019. Tokarz and Williams later reunited at FSU. Doherty is in his first season as the defensive coordinator. He spent the last 2 seasons as the safeties and nickelbacks coach for UB's former DC, Joe Bowen. Took the linebackers coach and run game coordinator job at Pittsburgh. Alex Garwig arrives in UB after coaching linebackers at Georgia Southern. Nate Trawick previously coached the defensive line at Colgate. McLaughlin, who was previously the special teams coordinator and defensive line coach at Columbia, brings more local flavor to staff. Running backs coach Jordan Johnson, a former Bull, is in his second season after a decorated career at Section 6 powerhouse Sweet Home under legendary coach John Fuller. Pat?
And we'll go back to General Manager Bean is most interested in defense early in camp, and this is written by Catherine Fitzgerald. Amidst plenty of change, Brandon Bean had his eyes on the defense. As the Buffalo Bills kicked off training camp on Wednesday, at St. John Fisher University, Bean, the team's general manager and president of football operations, has a lot to watch. But when it comes to position battles, he is gravitating toward one side of the ball. I think I'm most interested just in this defense, Bean said after Wednesday's practice. I feel like I know the offense better. Now the left guard battle on offense, that's a premium spot that we need to make sure we're good there. The number one thing is to protect number 17, quarterback Josh Allen. But beyond that, I'm excited about this defense and how Ed Oliver fits, how the rest of these D linemen, Deion Walker, TJ Sanders, Landon Jackson, obviously Bradley Chubb's new here, Greg Rousseau, more stand-up. I'm excited to see how all these pieces are being used, how they fit, and what's their best fit. The Bills' defense is still early in its evolution under defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard, as the team shifts to a 3-4 base front, as new faces are welcomed into the field and familiar faces are moved around. Bean is observing how it all comes together. Sure, there are position battles at the aforementioned left guard and at punter, but the defense offers more intrigue. At this point in training camp, the more any defender can show, the better. I'm excited to watch Jim use the different packages and putting guys in different spots. We talk about position-less players, and as I said, we've got some safeties that have some good experience in this league, and what are some different ways he can use them as we build this roster and decide who the best 53 players are. I think just the first thing is the front and how these guys, then you go to the second level with the backers and from that standpoint, and then the safeties. But Bean's evaluation at this juncture comes with a caveat. Leonhard is not racing to show all of his defense to the world just yet. As Bean spoke Wednesday, he made a point that the team is not even in pads yet, ramping up to that accordingly. Some of this time is spent projecting, some is seeing how players adapt from a mental perspective. Bean understands that any major judgments will come later in the process. It will, in fact, carry into the preseason. I think you do your best, Bean said. Head coach Joe Brady will have some physical practices as we go, and 1-versus-1s. And so you're trying to emulate the best you can. We have a scrimmage against Cleveland lined up, so we'll try to do some things there in that practice. And then you get to that third preseason game, and that's one of the big things you talk about. Who are the guys we still need to see, and are they in certain positions we need to see them? And that's kind of the conversation. So if we feel like we don't have it all answered going into the third game, you may see some guys still playing. If you're like, man, I'm surprised that guy's playing in the third game, that means we're still trying to figure out what their best role and best fit is for this team and this defense. For Bean, the mantra, one day at a time, rings especially true this training camp. There will be ups and downs, Bean said. It won't be perfect along the way, but that's exciting to kind of watch this group come together as a whole and what this new defense looks like. You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour, and let's see what kind of advice Eric is providing today. Dear Eric, I have a longtime friend who is downsizing as she prepares to sell her home and move into assisted living. Every time we talk, she shares a story about a unique item and a lucky person who has received it. I am genuinely happy about this and wholeheartedly support giving away treasures before you die so you can ensure it's going to a good home. I'm also human and starting to feel left out of the largesse. Any tips on how to navigate my feelings and her process? Not ungrateful. His response. Try to put her experience into context. She's going through a big change in her life, one that may involve some grief. Giving her belongings away may feel good, but it also might make her sad or give rise to existential fears about being forgotten. Try to listen to her stories from her perspective. See if you can hear her telling you about her attempts to leave a legacy and reckon with her life thus far. It may soften the edge a bit. Additionally, if there are items that you want, be proactive. Be proactive about asking for them. She may be grateful to know that there'll be an appreciative hands. If there isn't any particular item that you have your eye on, consider asking her if you can help her in this process. Having a conversation about her process in person with the actual items near at hand may make the experience feel different and offer an opportunity to ask for something you want. Lastly, I'm not trying to be too precious about this. Remember that she is giving something to you, her story. She's telling you about her life, her legacy, and her feelings. She's not doing that for everyone, and that's a valuable gift. Next, dear Eric, my partner and I have been together for more than 8 years. We both lost our spouses quite a few years ago and feel really blessed to be sharing these years of our lives together. We totaled up 110 years of marriage between us. We are in our late 80s and early 90s, independent and still living on our own, still traveling and having fun. On Mother's Day and Father's Day, we have not given gifts, but usually acknowledged and gave hugs and good wishes for many more. We each have 3 kids, all in their 60s and mostly retired. On this past Father's Day, my kids wished my partner a happy Father's Day, either online or in person. One of his sons came to visit him with a sweet card of thanks for all the love and caring he has done for him. His other 2 sons have yet even call or say hello, let alone wish him happy Father's Day. He sends each one of them a nice check each month, not because they need the money, but because he is a generous, giving person. He says it does not bother him that they did not call or acknowledge Father's Day. It makes me really angry with them and sad. I know their dad did not model this kind of behavior. I am doing my best to not blow my top at them on his behalf. Please give me some of your wise words to use with them. His answer. Your partner's sons absolutely should have reached out. However, it will be more productive to take your partner at his word that it doesn't bother him. To not do so risks creating problems between him and his kids, or between you and his kids. Now, one might argue that there's already a problem between you and his kids, namely that you're offended and saddened by their behavior. That's something that you can address. First, talk with your partner about your feelings and the expectations that you had of his sons. See if there is an aspect of his relationship with his sons that he's not sharing, or something that might cast this all in a different light. If you still feel the same way, consider telling him that you plan to talk to the Sons and see what he says about that. He may find that he's against the plan. It would be good to respect that. If you do talk to the Sons, try to lead with suggestions and requests for future behavior rather than castigation. You could say, for instance, I know your dad sees he doesn't expect calls on special days, but I've seen how much those calls mean to him when they come. Could you try to remember to reach out in the future? If you want a reminder, I'm happy to give it. I think both you and your dad will be glad you got a chance to connect. Good advice.
Food illness crisis has leaders worried about future events, and this is written from the KFF Health News. And just a reminder that this is a national newsroom that produces in-depth journalism about health issues and is one of the core operating programs, an independent source of health policy research, polling, and journalism. The next foodborne illness outbreak could be much worse. That's the concern of food safety leaders across the U.S. who are raising alarms over federal cuts they say have made it harder to detect and stop the spread of foodborne illness, such as the recent outbreaks of Cyclospora, which has sickened thousands in dozens of states, and they're especially worried the next pathogen will be much more deadly. Food safety in the U.S. is monitored by a piecemeal system of state and federal agencies. That network is in charge of detecting, investigating, and stopping outbreaks of foodborne illnesses. Key to the system is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's FoodNet program, created after 4 children died of E. coli in hamburgers in the early 1990s. States participating in the program, officially called the Foodborne Diseases Active Surveillance Network, contact labs to get case data that can signal when a problem is emerging. But in President Trump's second term, his administration has slashed billions of dollars in public health funding and fired thousands of workers at federal health agencies. It has also curtailed FoodNet, stopping the program's mandatory tracking of Cyclospora and 5 other pathogens that together kill hundreds of people in the U.S. each year. You're basically allowing for outbreaks to continue without being figured out. Invariably, more people will get sick, said Bill Marler, a Seattle area food safety lawyer and advocate who has filed lawsuits against Taco Bell on behalf of people who allege they were sickened by Cyclospora after eating there. Under the changes in the FoodNet surveillance system, the 10 participating states, meant to represent a cross-section of the broader population, no longer have to report cases of Listeria, for example. That bacteria kills as many as 30% of people who are diagnosed with it. Complications from Listeria infections can include convulsions, miscarriage, and sepsis that damages organs. It's much more rare than the type of E. coli bacteria still required to be tracked by FoodNet, but almost 95% of people infected with Listeria wind up hospitalized. Listeria infections result in an estimated 170 to 260 deaths each year, according to numbers from the CDC and the Food and Drug Administration. It's very hard to identify Listeria outbreaks, said Niall Fortin, the director of the Institute of Food Laws and Regulations at Michigan State University. Seeing it cut from FoodNet's mandatory surveillance really does disturb me, he said. 33 people died, and a pregnant woman had a miscarriage in 2011 after consuming cantaloupe contaminated with Listeria. The FDA identified the cause in less than 2 weeks. States participating in FoodNet also no longer have to report illnesses caused by Campylobacter, a bacteria often contracted from raw and undercooked poultry that afflicts an estimated 1.5 million people each year. The bacteria sickened about 60 people in Idaho this year in an outbreak linked to raw milk. A Product Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has championed, even though pasteurization kills harmful bacteria. HHS denies that the changes to FoodNet or Trump administration staffing cuts have elevated the risk that future outbreaks will be harder to identify and stop. FDA investigators were not affected by staffing changes or force reductions, and the FY 2027 President's budget proposes a $33 million increase for food safety activities, HHS spokesperson Emily Hilliard said in an email. And the CDC never stopped monitoring illnesses caused by Cyclospora, she said. The CDC has other passive surveillance systems, but they rely on states to report problems. There's no requirement for how long it takes them to do that, said Barbara Kolchak, the director of the Institute for Food Safety and Nutrition Security at George Washington University. And the FDA meets only a fraction of the number of inspections mandated by Congress. The FDA hasn't met its mandated targets for domestic and foreign inspections since 2018, according to a report early last year by the Government Accountability Office. Food safety inspections of manufacturers by the FDA plummeted from 10,600 facilities in 2011 to about 4,500 a decade later. Oh, I'm so sorry. The agency had 432 investigators for domestic and foreign inspections in 2024. That was before the Trump administration cut 3,500 jobs at the FDA in a push to reduce federal spending. Now, food safety leaders say the situation could get worse because the Trump administration wants to push more routine food inspections to the states and further reduce the number of federal staffers that handle investigations and inspections. State health departments are already overburdened from federal funding cuts and staffing shortages, forcing some to reduce or halt prevention programs so they can focus on more emergent concerns. The cuts are being felt in Michigan, which has reported more than 7,000 cases of cyclosporiasis, the most of any state. The cyclospora parasite can cause frequent diarrhea that can last for days or even weeks, as well as abdominal pain, nausea, and fatigue. The health department in Michigan already pulled some staff off other work, such as immunizations and sexual health, to handle a recent measles outbreak that sickened 7 people, including 5 kids. Now those same nurses are spending hours on the phone with hundreds of people with cyclosporiasis, trying to trace the source of their illness through weeks-old takeout receipts, bank statements, and recollections. We are starting to see the consequences of an underfunded public health system in 2026, said Michigan's chief medical executive. Currently, it's cyclospora. Eventually, we are going to lose the ability to detect something else. On Wednesday, according to Reuters, Michigan health officials reported 10,000 cases of cyclosporiasis, an increase of 397 cases from a day earlier.
And we go back to the Bills. Rain cannot dampen training camp. Even in the middle of summer, Buffalo Bill fans are prepared to cheer on their team in all kinds of nasty weather. But instead of puffer jackets and warm hats, crowds on the campus of St. John Fisher near Rochester on Tuesday wore raincoats and raised their umbrellas as they watched the Bills' first day of training camp for the 2026 season. The rain poured down at times, but it didn't seem to deter any Bills fans from making the pilgrimage to watch training camp's opening day. Cars appeared to fill every nearby lot, and some who live near the campus in Pittsford got in on the action by offering parking spaces in their driveways at $20 per vehicle. It was a joyful morning for families as parents stomped in puddles with laughing toddlers, and soaked teenagers exchanged their grimaces for grins as Josh Allen ran onto the field. Here I am, I'm all wet, but we're having a great time, Cheektowaga resident Kaylee Christ said. I just bring my poncho. I'm like, you know what? It's fine. We're thriving. Chris was attending her 12th training camp with her mom and was given her tickets this year from a season ticket holder. I think one of the first training camps I ever went to it was when Ryan Fitzpatrick was quarterback and I got his signature, she said, who said she hopes to get Josh Allen's next. She said she grew up a Bills fan and has found joy in watching the team blossom into who they are today. My mom and grandparents would always tell me stories of what it was like in the 90s and watching that team play football. It's just so cool to be able to grow up into it now and see the amazing team that we have and being able to be in the playoffs every year, she said. Hundreds of friends came to watch the training camp, many saying they traveled over an hour in the early morning to get there by the 8:30 a.m. start time. I'm tired, elementary school student Madeline Grismala said. Despite her unusually early summer vacation wake-up time, Grismala said she was excited to see Bills players run around the field, and she brought cheerleading and gymnastic skills to support the team. Josh Allen, Joe Anderson, and James Cook, Grismala said when asked about her favorite players. Buffalo Joe Anderson is a graduate of Lancaster High School and signed with the Bills in 2024. He continues to be a fan favorite this year. Fellow Lancaster native Ron Fino has been a Bills fan for decades and has high hopes for the team this season. I'm 65. I've been dealing with this for a long time, so let's win a Super Bowl, he said. Rufino said one of his favorite memories of Bills as a Bills fan was Buffalo's win over Baltimore in the AFC divisional playoffs in January 2021, when he watched from his seat in the end zone as Taron Johnson intercepted a pass from Lamar Jackson and ran 101 yards for a pick-six touchdown. He had one guy to beat, and that was it. Watching him run down the field is just something that pasted in my mind forever. Mother-daughter duo Rachel and Lennon Knight from Canandaigua did their Bills research before visiting training camp. I brushed up on my players last night. I tried to learn as many rookies as I could, just to keep an eye out, Rachel Knight said. I looked up photos of Cole Bishop, Lennon Knight said. She was hoping to get another wave from Bill's safety, her crush, she added. Cole Bishop, please follow me on Instagram, she said. For Mom Rachel, love of the Bills comes from a more sentimental place. As a lifelong Bills fan, she got to go into the Orchard Park Stadium when it was known as the Ralph, as a volunteer for the Special Olympics with her brother. My brother has since passed away, and so for one of the pictures that I have from that day is him holding me in like a fireman's carry outside the stadium. And I actually have that picture in my bedroom of him. It's one of my favorite memories, said Rachel.
Generic drugs to face tariffs. This is from USA Today. The most common prescription drugs you can pick up at the pharmacy counter or fill via mail order likely will get more expensive under President Donald Trump's plan to assess a 100% tariff on imported generic drugs in 2 years. In a social media post, the Republican president said all imported generic drugs will be tariff-free for another 2 years before a 100% tariff kicks in August 1st, 2028, and a 200% tariff 1 year later. This is done in order to reshore generic pharmaceutical production into America, with a penalty to those companies that decide not to build plant and equipment within the stated period of time given to them, Trump said in a July 21st social media post. If the tariffs are implemented, experts warn consumers probably will pay more for generic drugs, which account for 90% of prescription medications sold in the U.S. Health insurance companies and employers that sponsor health benefits will likely absorb higher costs, which are typically passed to consumers through higher insurance premiums, co-pays, and deductibles. Consumers often turn to generic drugs to get cheaper medications that are comparable to pricier brand-name drugs. Drug pricing experts warn assessing tariffs on generics will make the most commonly used medications more expensively. Imposing massive tariffs on generic medicines risks making lower-cost generic drugs millions of Americans rely on more expensive and harder to access. said the CEO for Patients for Affordable Drugs. Tariffs of this magnitude could have enormous consequences, raising costs, worsening shortages, and putting access to life-saving medicines at risk. Trump touted negotiated deals with 17 drug companies that agreed to most favored nation pricing deals representing 80% of brand name drugs marketed in the U.S. Those deals, however, did not include generic drugs. Industry groups also warned generic drug manufacturers would have difficult time affording tariff costs. When the Trump administration in 2025 announced tariffs for goods imported from Canada, Mexico, and China, Association for Accessible Medicine CEOs said generic manufacturers simply can't absorb new costs. After Trump's announcement July 21st, he said his organization needs to better understand the terms. He said his group would pursue policies that support and stabilize both the industry and the access necessary to ensure patients reliable options for affordable medicines. Murphy added that generic manufacturing grew significantly in the U.S. over the past 2 years, but warned reimbursement for generics is a significant inhibitor to the growth of this sector. Vontobel analyst Stefan Schneider said the U.S. seeks to reverse a shift of generic drug production to lower-cost countries, but bringing manufacturing back likely would raise generic drug prices in the U.S., Reuters reported. Schneider added that new rules would predominantly affect China and India, where most generic drugs and drug ingredients are manufactured. The U.S. has more than 1,400 manufacturing sites designated to finish medications into a pill, capsule, or liquid vial, conduct quality control, and complete packaging and labeling. However, just 230 U.S. factories make active pharmaceutical ingredients, according to data from QYOBO, a drug intelligence platform. By comparison, QYOBO said there are 524 pharmaceutical ingredient factories in China, 564 in India, and 670 in Europe. The U.S. pharmaceutical sites often are smaller and make fewer products than the large plants in India and China. Also, ingredients for nearly half of the drugs the Department of Health and Human Services Office of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, what a name. Sorry, I was taken by that. Let me repeat that. Also, ingredients for nearly half of the drugs the Department of Health and Human Services Office of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, designated as essential medicines, are made domestically. However, U.S. sites do not produce ingredients for 40 of 83 essential medicines, according to QYOBO.
Okay, pumping up. 6 tips for keeping your budget on track when the cost of gasoline soars. Number 1, calculate. The first step is to calculate how much more you likely will pay. For a typical commuter, a price hike usually adds somewhere about $40 to $100 a month. Add up how much you spend per fill-up and multiply it by how many times you expect to get gas next month. Compare this to how much you previously spent. This can give you a general idea of how much more you can expect to spend. If you have a budget, revisit recent months and see how much you spend on gas in the past and compare it to how much you spend now. Alternatively, you can go through past credit card transactions or receipts to see how much you've spent. Number 2, adjust. Now that you know how much more you expect to spend on gas, you can find other places to cut back. Examine discretionary spending and identify the lowest priorities. That might be a subscription to streaming services, expensive food delivery services, or membership not used frequently. If you don't have a budget, to go back through your past transactions and figure out where you spend the most money and where you can temporarily spend less. Number 3, avoid credit. Many drivers pay for gas on a credit card. If you carry a balance month to month, high interest rates can mean you're paying much more in the long run. even after accounting for extra fuel rewards and credit card points. If that additional $75 at the gas pump means motorists are forced to incur revolving debt, they could pay interest longer and the price increase. Number 4, protect priorities. Don't put your retirement and long-term saving goals at risk. If you have a plan to save a certain amount per month, stick to that plan and adjust other areas if your gas budget has to increase. A good savings plan has room for diversification. If possible, avoid reducing retirement contributions or pulling from retirement accounts. Cut discretionary spending, such as dining out, first. If you absolutely need to pull from savings or reduce your retirement contributions, only take what you need and minimize the effects as much as possible to replace the loss later when prices go down. And number 5, find ways to save. Get gas at wholesale clubs or grocery stores that offer discount. Track mileage for driving to work or volunteering at a charity for reimbursement or tax deductions. Compare gas prices on apps like AAA and Gas Buddy and fill up when you're nearby. Complete regular maintenance, such as maintaining recommended tire pressure, replacing air filters, etc. Sign up for gas station rewards programs. Carpool with family members, neighbors, or friends, and organize errands into fewer trips. Preparation can prevent you from getting caught off guard. Create a small fuel cushion so that you can be prepared when prices unexpectedly become so high rather than reacting to them. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, July 30th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, please call us at 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful rest of your day.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring.